Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Today I want to go through some of the recent news from the different tours. It's been mainly overshadowed by this huge Djokovic disaster that we've seen in the news. You probably followed it in some way, but I'm gonna go through it briefly at the end of this. But first of all, congrats to Team Canada for winning the ATP Cup. Well done to Denis Shapovalov and Felix Auger-Aliassime. They played really well. These two youngsters might need some confidence boosting. They had a good season in 2021, but to take that extra next step, I think this might do them a world of good. Especially Auger-Aliassime, he has lost like 8 finals before this. To actually manage to win the final match against Bautista Agut was a great thing, I think, for his confidence. So keen to see what will happen now to his career and also to Dennis, who I've talked about before. He switched to the E-Zone 98. He seems to play well with that. So kudos to Team Canada and all the best for the rest of the season to these two young talents. Guy Monfils, as I've talked about as well, he moved over to Artengo for this year, and what a way to start the year. He wins Adelaide after not dropping one set, looked supremely confident, was playing well. What racket is he using? Artengo Control Tour 960. Is it something he's going to endorse or use, or what's actually underneath the design, paint job, whatever? We don't really know at the time, but he's definitely playing well. That we can see. He looks to have found his happiness in tennis again and seems to enjoy himself on the tennis court. And I think that's so important for any tennis player. Also, congrats to Rafa Nadal for winning a title, his 89th title in his career. Pretty crazy when you think about it. He beat Maxime Cressy, a new finalist on the ATP Tour and someone who's very exciting to watch because he's playing a type of tennis that's become extremely rare these days, serve and volley. He uses his big frame and his big serve to get to the net ASAP, and he covers it really well. And Nadal sometimes struggles with these types of players that play ultra aggressively and just goes for it. But as usual with Rafa, he finds a way to win, and he managed to win this match 7-6, 6-3 after really putting in his best tennis at the most important points. That's what makes them great, these champions. Looking at the WTA Tour, there were some predictable results there as well. Barty, she won in Adelaide very impressively, looked to be hitting the ball really well, should be one of the top favorites for the Australian Open title. And in Melbourne, Simona Halep had a similar kind of performance. She played really well, beat Kudermetova in the final 6-3, 6-2. Looks to be in great shape also for the Australian Open. And Amanda Anisimova, she won in Melbourne Somerset 2. I think the tournament is called. These tournaments have some weird titles because they do 2 tournaments in a row in the same place. But she is playing with a new racket, as I said in a previous video, a Wilson instead of the Pure Drive she was using. It looks like a Steam 100 mold to pretty much everyone, I think. But I've heard that it's a new Wilson model, or they're going to re-release this mold. We will see. But she won this tournament, beating Alexandra Sasnovic in the final in 3 pretty tight sets. Okay, so let's get into the Djokovic story. It all started with an Instagram post where he wished everyone well, and he said that he was going to head down under with a medical exemption, and that he was excited to play and so on. That kind of started a fireball of stuff from local politicians in Australia, from a lot of people who are really upset that he could actually go to Melbourne being unvaccinated. People that haven't seen their family in a long time, etc. They get really frustrated. As you might know, Australia has had extremely rough mandates and restrictions and lockdowns and so on during this pandemic. So a lot of emotions, a lot of frustrations, which has kind of followed this whole pandemic all along, everywhere you go. So when Novak arrived in Melbourne, he had all the papers, he thought, but he was denied visa and entry into the country. He could appeal this process, but then he would have to stay in this quarantine hotel for a few days. And yeah, he did that. There was so much noise on social media and protests and Novak fans going crazy and other fans going crazy. The world is a crazy place right now. It's just ridiculous at times, whether you're on one side of the vaccine mandates or not. It's a weird place to be in. The government didn't look like the best player in this. Novak might have brought some of this on himself, not getting vaccinated, but he believes what he believes, so you have to respect that. I think it would have been clear all along if they just said we don't allow any exemptions to this rule, if they really believe in it 100%. So they should have just said that. On Monday, today, the court overruled the visa cancellation, meaning that Novak is allowed to enter the country and play tennis at the Australian Open. Some people will be very upset at this because they feel like the vaccine mandates are not respected and he's just, doing whatever he wants. Some players had to go home due to this situation. They weren't vaccinated and their exemptions weren't valid for some reason, so they had to go home. But in this case, Novak is known to win whatever he tries to do, so he also beat the Australian court system. So the whole idea behind his exemption was that he had COVID for the second time. He contacted it first in 2020, as you might remember, and he had it now the second time on the 16th of December. He tested positive. Then he was seen doing some events, meeting kids, doing press a few days after that. And he tested negative again a few days after that. So the idea was that you could apply for an exemption if you had COVID within 6 months prior to the tournament or something like that. I think that was the rule. Then there are some journalists who have tried this vaccine certificate, they tried the QR code, and sometimes they get a positive reply on the website, sometimes they get a negative reply on the website. It's a bit like a farce. Yeah, well, now he's going to play anyway. He just posted a picture standing with his team on the Rod Laver Arena, getting ready for tennis, thanking all his fans for the support. There's all kinds of theories and speculations. No matter what, I think we have to leave this whole mess behind us and focus on the tennis now. I think these things are not so good for tennis. Would have been much easier if they just have a stronger rule, didn't decide to enforce it, or he had just gotten the vaccine or something. Would have been easier for everyone. But Djokovic, he is a strong-headed person, to say the least. He is used to winning, he's used to getting his way, and he ended up winning this part of the journey. So we will see the reception he gets when he starts playing. He has his die-hard fans all over the world, as you know, but he also has some people that are not so happy. So we will see what goes on when we get to the tournament. Will Djokovic now win the Australian Open? It's very, very likely. Of course, he has won it 9 times. He might be playing with some, audience support going the other way, but on the other hand, he is the best in the world at playing against the audience, against the player, against all circumstances, and he is so good at turning that to energy and defeating the opponent. But we will see. I mean, this mess is probably not over yet. It's just very tiring that when tennis is in the news, it's always these kind of things and not something a bit more positive. There's enough polarization in the world already. I don't think we need to add more fuel to the fire. That's the news for this week. If you find this stuff interesting, I'll do a news program every week of some kind on Mondays. I think that's good to kind of summarize what's been happening in the previous week. More tennis to come. The Australian Open qualifiers started today, I think, and some other ATP, the Sydney one, and so on. So we'll have to follow and see what happens with players' preparation for the first Grand Slam of the year. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.